And welcome back to Watches Live, the only show we film right here on Watchbox Reviews. Thanks to everyone joining in. Hopefully my internet's a bit more lively. I want to remind everyone who is just joining us that we do have, well, this is a preview, but we do have a Patek Philippe promotion running from tomorrow through next Wednesday. So we will have a one-week Patek Philippe promotion on thewatchbox.com, exclusive promotion prices on several key watches, including a few you'll see tonight, but only through the next week, starting tomorrow, Wednesday, U.S. Eastern. All right, we've got Edward Ledden of Sweden in here, and Omegatron joining from Walnut Creek, California. Quick wrist check for those who are new to the show. I'm quite predictable. Zinn EZM 1.1, 43mm hardened tegimented steel. It's actually a 60-minute chronograph with reverse triggers, as you can see on the 9 o'clock side. The hand in the center is the 60-minute. There's another hand for 60 seconds. You can see them overlapping. A bidirectional rotating countdown bezel, and you can also see that the timepiece features a unique humidity extraction mechanism on the flank. They actually fill the watch with nitrogen. I know it says AR, but it's nitrogen. And then they put a copper sulfate capsule in the flank to remove any moisture that might get in. I love this watch to death. A 500-piece limited edition from 2017. That's been my one and only for a while. Alexei Samola joining in from Finland. JBO Surf from Adelaide. We've got Yahia B joining in from Egypt. And we've got Matt Foster. We've got Blue Shirt Buddha. We've got B and S. Jeremy Walker from Austin. And I can see we've got King N. Hello, Tim. How have you been, my good man? King Noctis, I have been well. Let me immediately gratify those who clicked on the clickbait thumbnail image of the Patek Nautilus. We're talking about the 2012 to present Albino Nautilus. This is the silver white dial watch, exactly the same as the standard 5711, but a bit more tropical, vibrant, exuberant, and I must say easier to read with the blackened white gold indices and hands against the silver base. The timepiece is still slender, 8.3 millimeters thick as I measure, and of course on the case back, we'll take a quick look at the Patek Philippe manufacturer caliber 324 SC. Now the thing about the Nautilus is that it remains a unique combination of slender profile and water resistance, as the timepiece, despite being under 8.5 millimeters thick, is 120 meters water resistant, and this sets it apart from the Royal Oaks, which, offshore aside, are all 50 meters or less. Now, throwing this on the wrist, technically we're looking at a 40 millimeter watch, but the 5711 wears considerably smaller than that. It's only about 44 millimeters lug to lug, and I can recommend it for a smaller wrist. Now, would I pay $60,000 for one of these? That's not my preference, but if you want a unique proposition from one of the great brands, and you want it right now, that is the going rate. A timepiece that's easy to see at night, fully swimmable, and could easily be your one and only. If you're not into Zinn as I am, this would be a way to go way upscale and satisfy both your inclination for an all-around dress watch and a tough, hardy sports watch. Okay, jumping into the box, we've got Federico F. from Italy, and we've got Helmut joining right back in Brick Lane, saying the Nautilus never appealed to him. I like it, but not at the rates they're trading today. It was a fun watch when it was 18 grand used. And then I can see we've got Judson Van Meter joining in from New Orleans, and we've got Brick Lane saying he prefers the Royal Oak. Let me oblige you. I have a Royal Oak on the table, and it's the Royal Oak as you've never seen it. This is the 1999 450-piece Royal Oak 1500, or 15,100, I should say, the time for trees. Now, what appears to be at first a brain on the dial is in fact the image of a tree, because the Audemars Piguet Foundation, which this watch originally benefited, planted over 12,000 trees between the time the watch came out and the foundation's inception in 1992. There is a different color on this dial. It's not the standard jumbo blue. This is called Cosmos blue. It is much lighter and much brighter, almost an iridescent electric blue. Let's put the watch on the wrist. I should mention, this is also one of only a few 36mm Royal Oaks with a display case back. Let's throw it on the wrist and appreciate the fact that a 36 Royal Oak, by the way, only 8.3mm thick, wears like a larger round watch. I'd say it's more like a 38 or a 39 round watch, because from lug to lug, when you include those solid rigid end links, you actually have about a 50mm watch across the wrist. How about that dial in the light? It does things no standard jumbo will. It's not just the pattern, which is unique, it's the color, which is also special and specific to this model. Turning it over, you can see what I was talking about before. It's built like the original Jumbo and today's 15202. The case and the case back are all of one piece. There's no seam between them. You can see when I screw out the crown and pull it out, it's a front loader. There's a slot through which the movement actually presses into the case with the stem already fitted. The dial goes in through the front. So this is the original Gerald Genta 5402 case construction. Now the case back showing Audemars Piguet caliber 2225. It's based on a JLC 889 with a very special rotor. As you can see, that one featuring the image of the leaves on an engraved gold base. Turn it over one more time and you can see the beating balance. It's a JLC 889 with all that entails. It's thin, it's fine, it's beautifully made. And of course, Audemars Piguet owning 40% of Jaeger-LeCoultre right up to 2000. At the time this watch was made, they were actually one Siamese company with AP a 40% stakeholder in JLC. This is a timepiece that is going to be polarizing. Not everyone's going to love the color of the dial. Not everyone's going to love the Arbor Day theme of the watch. But if you want something that no one else has got, what a way to do it. Okay, jumping into the box right here, we have Jonathan S. saying, love that AP rotor from San Francisco. Bear Clooney Watch is saying, finish on the Royal Oak is exceptional. That's true. Case, bracelet, bezel, and when it's a JLC or a JLC-based movement as well. I can also see right here, we've got James G. Arthur saying, not sure if I like the face, but I like the open case back on the AP. Being an original construction makes it special. John Hudson being an individual saying, I'm not a huge fan of the Genta designs. And I gotta say, as far as the 70s designs are concerned, I like them, I don't love them, so I'm sort of with you right there. Let's talk about a watch that's going to be a unifying force tonight, because I don't think it's possible to not love an early 1990s IWC Pilot's Watch chronograph. This is the 3706, the original Pilot's Watch chronograph. It's the -07 model on the Silver Brick Road bracelet. And now I want to show you a few features of this watch that stand out. First, 39mm case. Second, full original tritium dial. These were phased out entirely by the end of 2001. This watch of the 90s has full tritium dial and hands, critically. They've not been replaced at service. It has its original IWC fish crown rather than the service replacement Probus crown. And of course the timepiece, De Vlieger chronograph, reminding you that it is the Pilot's chronograph. There's a soft iron cage underneath there for the IWC modified Valjoux 7750, giving it anti-magnetic properties. Open up the clasp and you could see IWC exceptionally engine turning the inside of the clasps back then, and you'll appreciate ergonomically every individual link in the bracelet on both sides is removable. In fact, you can dismantle this bracelet using 2/2 of a toothpick. It is a lovely watch, and I will give you a wrist shot. You could see back then it wasn't necessary for IWC watches to be big and bold. Workmanlike and soulful was more than enough, and this watch has both characteristics in spades. Wearable on any wrist, this is old school IWC aviator's horology, and I love it. Jumping into the box right here, we got a question. Naresh Pape saying, what year did that AP come out? That was 1999. It was the Time for Trees 2, and they made 450 in stainless steel. Right here I could see we have John Hudson saying, I do like the blue dial of that AP, and then we've got Benjamin B saying, can't get on board with that dial, reminds me of Timberland. Good point. Edward Ledden saying, I prefer the standard 5711 blue dial Nautilus. I'm a simple guy, and the Royal Oak just doesn't appeal to me. Separately right here, we have John Hudson saying that that IWC is a watch, and Burning Mr. B old school at best. And then right here we have Jonathan S. mentioning the Saxonia thin and imploring him to check it out. Well, I've got another watch for you to check out. If you're into slender dress timepieces that are underrated and criminally so, the 2018 Parmigiani Fleurier Toric Chronometre. This is a 40.8mm red gold case that came out in 2018, taking the traditional Toric case, which was Michel Parmigiani's first ever case design back in 1996, giving us a glorious javelin hand dial with a matte black base, a gold frame for the triple date, and pre-Art Deco, almost Art Nouveau font Arabic numerals. You can see that the form of the watch, bezel and case, is almost like a compressed Greek column, and that's by design. When you look at the lugs, get real close there, I'll hold it steady. You can see that sharp break between the lug flank and the case. That's created by soldering the lug to the case and then hand finishing to remove all evidence of the welded joint to create that sharp break. The case, like everything, including the hands, even the balance, the hairspring, and the escapement, created in-house at the Parmigiani companies. Now turn it over and you can see the Parmigiani Chronometre certified caliber PF335. This basic architecture has also been used in sports watches, including innumerable Richard Mille models. Automatic winding, COSC certified, 55-hour power reserve with a guilloche cut gold winding mass and a free-sprung balance adjusted in 5 positions. It's only 9.5 millimeters thick, and you can see the black polish of those lugs. Exceptional in the studio light. Now let's throw it on the wrist, and I'll highlight one of the features of this watch that endears it to me most. 44.9 millimeters from lug to lug. So you can wear this watch on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. My wrist is 16. It's an easy fit. I'll also mention that the timepiece is rare. You will never see another. And the attention to detail is exquisite. Take a look at the lunette moon style counterweight on the needle style seconds hand. This watch is just overflowing with glittering nuances and brilliant strokes of styling savoir-faire and flair. Jumping to the box right now, I can see Blue Shark Buddha saying, lovely Parmigiani, and Pud asking, Tim, when you say soldering, do you mean welding, or are the lugs really held together with solder? The term has been used a little bit loosely. Oftentimes, soldered lugs are described as welded lugs and vice versa. It's all gold. It's one material. It is a welding. I think the translation is what kind of confuses people, but strictly speaking, it is a welded lug. And the welded lug is in contrast to simply stamping or machining the case as a whole. Welded construction is more expensive, more labor intensive, always requires hand craftsmanship, and takes more time, which is why you rarely see it. Many Longa watches that appear to have welded lugs actually have lugs that are fixed by screws from the inside. So even Longa has been guilty of faking the welded lug look. Now, if we want to talk about timepieces that represent a value proposition, we really have to talk, at least in this company, about Rolex and my favorite Datejust of all time. I've been convinced. I've seen many variations, I've had many opinions and temporary faves, but this one has stolen my heart and I don't think I'm getting it back. This is the Datejust 116200. Let's count all of the virtues, shall we? Stainless steel with a domed, not flat conical bezel, no fluted gold here, domed bezel, giving it a little bit of a neo bubble back look, like a vintage Rolex bubble back. On the dial side, the concentric circle Gadron style dial. This is known as the Rolex concentric dial in explosive metallic blue. Arabic numerals, fully loomed of white gold, arrayed in radial fashion like a military dial. And then we have a roulette date with the evens in black and the odds in red. Finally, the Jubilee bracelet. And let us not forget the first Rolex Datejust in 1945, the 40th anniversary of Rolex, the Jubilee. That first Datejust was born with the Jubilee bracelet. The signature Cyclops Eye only came in 1954. Now, throwing this one on the wrist, I should mention that it's got everything you want in a sports watch. Automatic winding, highly shock resistant with the same movement you'll find in a Submariner. It's fully loomed, it's stainless steel, and the timepiece wears feather light thanks to that wonderfully silken Super Jubilee bracelet. I call it the Super Jubilee because it has all solid links and it has the more substantial milled out clasp that launched with this generation of Datejust in 2005. That is my favorite permutation of the Datejust. And I can see right here we have Freddie Turner saying, sorry, that red date is ghastly. Well, I can fix that. How about now? That's the magic of the roulette date. Okay, I've got a bit more going on right here. Burning Mr. V, Memovox, is it ever going to happen? I certainly hope so. I still love JLC and I still have one vintage Memovox in my collection and one on the table, so to be continued. If it happens, I promise you'll hear it here first. By the way, everyone who watched on Sunday and made my first weekend watches show a success, thank you very much. There will be another one this Sunday morning. And then Thomas Burnett saying, I really like the concentric dial, the blue as well. Let's talk about another take on the concentric dial and another take on a very similar Datejust that's critically different in a few respects. This is the same generation, but it's the 116231, two-tone in a very au courant, rose gold and stainless steel. You can see this one also features the concentric dial and the radial Arabic numerals with the roulette date. But here we have two-tone rose and steel, we have the fluted bezel, and we have a black metallic concentric dial with the oyster bracelet, giving this watch a completely different look. It's a bit more robust. I would even say perhaps a bit more versatile, as the rose gold makes it a wonderful unisex and dress option. I would also say, for a certain guy who wants to make a certain kind of statement, the rose gold is punchier than the full steel. Throw this one on the wrist and do my best with my microfiber to remove all of those fingerprints. You can see that the presence of this one is quite different. And for our poster who had an opinion about the red date, it fits a bit better with Ever Rose red gold. As you can see, the Datejust 36 millimeters, always a good fit for a small wrist, 44.2 millimeters lug to lug, 45.2 millimeters link to link. That's solid end links included. It is a bit bigger on the Oyster than it is on the Jubilee. Okay. Then we have a question from Turkischer Meister Tim, wondering how the Glashütte Original CQ dive watch, a retro re-edition by Glashütte this year, was received in the industry. He knows I'm fed up with retro designs, but that's okay. I'm happy to see Geo doing a sports watch. I will say I'm fed up with the tributes, but this one's a little bit different, so at least they're doing something that's marginally distinct from the endless iterations of roughly 1965 Oris Divers 65 wannabes. I would also say realistically, if they keep it rare, it will be special. I think the response in the industry is about what you expect. They need a sports watch, but the tribute thing has run its course. There are too many of them. It feels like a Me Too watch at this point. They may as well have released it in bronze. So while the watch in and of itself, in isolation, is appealing, it does feel very iterative. Okay, jumping right here. Busta Zach saying, I love the weekend show, and Benjamin B saying, keep the weekend show going. Guys, let's make that weekend show a 10,000 view show. This is a small channel, but we're a passionate group. And then right here we got Bear Clooney Watches saying, roulette date reminds me of my favorite Roadster. Good point. I love that sentiment. Now let's jump back into the high horology, sky high horology in this case, released in 2015. This is the Patek Philippe Calatrava Pilot, the 5524G. Now you're used to seeing it on a brown contrasting stitch calfskin aviator strap. Here you can see the same stitch pattern with the cross hatching, and you can see the same Clevis style buckle, but we have a very different look with this gloss navy blue alligator leather rather than the calfskin. It wonderfully matches the matte granular blue of the dial. There is a contrast between the matte and the polish, or I should say the matte and the gloss, and that looks wonderful. Throw it on the wrist, and I'm really digging the way this one wears. It is somehow a bit more coherent than the standard watch on the standard strap. It's big at white gold and 42 millimeters. There's no mistaking this timepiece. It stands out. It's one of the largest Patek Calatravas ever made, but it's a substantial watch and it feels its price. It's also 60 meters water resistant, making this one of the rare splashable and, dare I even say, surface swimmable Patek Philippe watches. It also has a brilliant quarter turn locking system for the actuators that drive the travel time functionality. The quarter turn system locks them so that you cannot accidentally drive the travel time complication when you don't want to. So you're always going to be on time for your flight when you're traveling abroad, perhaps even to the home of Patek Philippe, Genève. Okay, let's go back down the price scale all the way to the entry level and talk about a brand that, as far as I know, may never have featured on the show. And then right here we have BS saying, I've always been on the fence about the Calatrava Pilot. And then right here we have WC saying, the glasses are going nowhere except Tim for the rare cycling jungle fighter watch freak he is. To be continued. I'm going to be entering some time trials. I'll let you guys know how that goes. Okay. We have a good evening note from John Watchsmith. Good evening, John. Thank you for joining us. This is the 2018 Rado HyperChrome 616, based on the 1971 Rado Cape Horn Datejust. This is a full ceramic, automatic, 80-hour power reserve, 100-meter water resistant, full ceramic all-arounder. I'm going to say the full ceramic on the matte, almost nubuck texture leather strap is a wonderful combo. And though it's a 46, there are 46s and then there are 46s. And this wears 46 lug to lug, which makes it wearable on a small wrist. Now, it's big, it's black, it's stark. I'd even say monolithic. This thing could feature in a Stanley Kubrick sci-fi film, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure it didn't, as the 1970s is the right time frame. But the look is very much of our era, all black with contrasting finishes on the dial for a little bit of a sparkle and a dynamic look in the light. The watch is for those who want something luxury but realize that scratches and scuffs are going to befall their Royal Oaks, their Nautilus, their gold and platinum watches, and they wear this watch because the ceramic can take the hit. Now, if you're the type to fracture or crack sapphires, look elsewhere. But if you're the type who hates scratches, scuffs, and swirls, and you don't want to slum it with your daily driver, get a true luxury watch from a Swatch Group brand and go with the Rado 1616 HyperChrome. That is a watch I actually dig. And then right here, we've got Bear Clooney watches saying very stealthy Rado cool. And then we've got Truth Fears Guilty saying Rado has been finished for a long time. Rado's not quite dead. By the way, a GCF asking, Tim, if you traveled to France during the tour? No, but I have spoken with Waco about doing L'Étape du Tour and writing articles for Evolution about the experience, so to be continued. I would love to take him up on that, especially if he's paying the tab. And then right here we have a comment, Rado has been finished for a long time from Truth Fears Guilty. Yes and no. In the West, Rado does not have the following it once did, but Rado was also built as a watch brand. Remember, it was only created as a watch brand during the 1950s. It used to be the Schlumpf Clock Company. They made their success in wristwatches in the Far East, and especially with the Horse series, they built their brand and they built their house. And that's why a lot of the vintage Rado you see today is coming back from the Far East. That's where it was originally sold. So Rado is still popular out east, not like it used to be, but it does have a role within the Swatch Group, and they still offer some impressive watches, especially in the designer series. And we've got Dave O saying Rado killer. And then right here we have Fred's 1001. Thank you for the Omega Speedmaster Racing review. I got one thanks to your review. Looks physically better on video and picture and crisper and brighter than on, okay, he's saying looks physically better than on video or picture crisper and brighter. That's true. Every watch looks better on your wrist. Let's jump into a watch that looks wonderful on camera and I have to admit far better in person. We have not one but two enamel dial Patek Philippe dress watches tonight, and this is the 5116G. 36 millimeters in white gold. It's one of the hobnail bezel Calatravas that started with the early 1970s 3520. So this is a very different look for the Calatrava. You can see email at the base of the dial. It's not a smartwatch. It's a Grand Faux enamel white dial. Turn it all over and you have a Patek Philippe seal caliber 215 manual wind. Every manual wind watch should have a display case back. Now it's a wonderfully wearable watch because it's less than 42 millimeters lug to lug. So I can endorse this watch, giving it a rare endorsement for any wrist of any size. No lower limit on size for this watch. And it's about 8.3 millimeters thick, which makes it nice and slender and cuff compatible. And then right here, Burning Mr. B saying that is a cool Calatrava, and Jose R saying Rado and Mito are very similar in worldwide presence. Mito, another great value. Chronometers, silicone hairspring, 80-hour power reserve, and swimmable. You can find some incredible watches inside Rado's collection, and they're one of the few watch brands that will list in plain, bold print the actual prices for servicing watches with Rado by movement, complication, and style. Rado, honesty, and an honest product. Now let's talk about a timepiece that represents a love-hate watch. This is the second generation Panerai Luminor 1950 Ceramica Tutonero. This is the 2018 to present PAM 1438. The original 2012 438 was the first Panerai full ceramic watch with bracelet and case blacked out inside and out. The Tutonero 438 was a landmark watch. Well, this watch continues in that tradition, but with a new movement, now with a full balance bridge and more slender. This is a 3-day power reserve automatic GMT, 100 meters water resistant, 44 millimeters. This timepiece is 55.2 lug to lug with a 24 millimeter spacing. A couple of features I like here. If you look at the lugs, You can see that screws are used rather than the spring bars typically used on ceramic Panerai watches. You can see every individual link in the bracelet on both sides is removable for sizing, and the timepiece features a wonderfully useful complication. A second time zone that's fully loomed is always ready and ideal for travel, and of course you have the iconic device protecting the crown, the locking lever that compresses the crown rather than forcing you to thread the stem through the seals, thus degrading them. So you have both better protection than a shouldered crown guard, and you have a big flag to warn you in case the crown is unlocked. Lock it up, now you've got 100-meter water resistance. This is a timepiece that is for people like the Rado who hate scratches, scuffs, and swirls. It's not for people who dent their watches. It's not for people who chip sapphires, because if you're in that category, you're going to fracture a ceramic case. I want to be honest, and I want to be a good matchmaker and pair you with the proper watch. So this is for those who simply hate disfiguring their watches, but don't ultimately take that last step towards abuse. There's a line between use and abuse. If you're on the wrong side, go with a metal watch. Now I can see Hans is saying, I was never into those watches. Turkischer Meister saying, the blackout makes it appear more compact. I find it charming. And then I can see right here, BS saying, that is not for our own Brian Govberg, who tends to rather beat on his watches. Oh, right. And then we've got Dems Chen joining from Fürth, Germany, and I can see we've got Lee J saying, thoughts on Parmigiani Fleurier, particularly the 8-day manual wind movements. Well, I love them. Honestly, I would say go with the pantograph. Go with the pantograph, get the long power reserve, get the Kalpa case, get the unique pantograph dial that's based on an old English pocket watch. If you've got the money to play in that league, you will not be disappointed. You're getting some of the best finishing, engineering, watchmaking, and most original design in the world. In an era when everyone is making Me Too watches with blue dials, bronze cases, and vintage tribute style, Parmigiani relentlessly builds watches that only a few people like. And I have to respect that. They do what, honestly, they enjoy. And they say, you're either with us or against us. And if you're against us, take a walk. There are very few watch brands that do not pander, especially when sales are on the line. And Parmigiani is one of the good guys. Okay. Let's talk about a watch that pretty much everyone should like, from a brand I happen to love. The most underrated of the Holy Trinity, and the only Vacheron on the table tonight. This is the year 2000 600-piece limited edition Carré 1936, based on a 1936 Vacheron Constantin Carré rectangular, or I should say square watch that predated reference numbers. This one is delicious, 32 millimeters wide if you include the lugs, and approximately 36 millimeters lug to lug if you measure it horizontally across the wrist. This is a timepiece that is slender and beautiful, faceted and glittering. It is a lovely tribute to the high style and wristwatch experimentation of the 1930s, before the round watch established its hegemony. Turn it over. Let's get real close there. You have a Vacheron caliber 1017, which, let's be honest, is a JLC Reverso 822 that has been adjusted in an exquisite chronometer style 5 positions, beautifully made and shaped for the case. It's also properly sized for this application. You can see the individual numbering out of 600, a JLC Reverso powered Vacheron Historique, and you can see that the underside of the lugs is deliciously scooped and curved. This is a wonderful watch that will only appeal to the tastes of a few. It's not large, it's not extravagant, and as you can see, Vacheron is all about the details here. This is one that can easily disappear under any cuff. So if you want something that's big and bold, as they say, this is not your watch. This is not the extrovert's watch. This is not a brash timepiece. This is an exquisite timepiece, and note the Sigma signed dial. This was the last of the a priori mark Vacherons back in 2000, a style signature promoted by a Swiss precious metals trade group during the 70s. If there was gold on the watch of your dial, there would be the little Sigma signature. Most brands, short of Vacheron and Patek, abandoned this by the 1990s. Vacheron carried on late, and this was one of the last appearances of that nostalgic signature. Jumping into the box right here, I could see Eric Nielsen saying the proportions are actually quite good, but you almost need a top hat and tall coat to pull that off. Hell, why not throw in a cane? And then right here, I can see we've got Bebop saying that one is sexy. And Bud Owens, what are the chances of VC producing the Overseas Everest dual time? I think it's a test balloon. I think the chances of something like that are good because remember, in the past with the Deep Stream series on the second generation watch, they created watches out of stainless steel and titanium with rubber straps, and they launched all three at the same time on the Deep Stream in 2009. So I think we have a good chance of seeing something like that, not something exactly like that. And I have Jose R saying, that's a weird case shape. Luke is asking, is that designed to be a lady's watch? No, that is a man's watch, and that is a traditionally sized men's dress watch. And then we have Bear Clooney Watches saying, not a fan of this VC by Hermes. Okay, it's a polarizing watch, and a small rectangular watch will always be that. Let's jump back into something that I think is a bit more universal. Perhaps the most universal watch Omega has built in recent years. This is the Aqua Terra 38.5 millimeters in stainless steel. 38.5 with a lush blue metallic teak deck style dial, applique indices and Omega logo, 38.5 millimeters. This one's only about 45 millimeters end link to end link across the wrist. And when you throw it on the wrist, you can see just how universal the style is. It's highly water resistant. It's 150 meters, so it's not a dive watch like the other Seamasters, but it can absolutely swim anywhere you and I are likely to swim. It's beautiful, glittering, and glorious with the classic Seamaster and Speedmaster lyre lug case shape, 60-hour power reserve, a coaxial chronometer with caliber 8500, and it has some smart details that I happen to enjoy, such as the time zone feature. Every caliber 8500 gives you the ability to independently step the hour hand even as the watch continues to tick and keep time. Now, if you are traveling, this is a great way to make adjustments as you span time zones. You could drive the date in either direction across the international date line, so you have incredible versatility there. Of course, you also have hacking seconds, and although the 8500s are mechanically finished movements, you can see on the case back that the finishing is thoughtfully designed. The arabesque Côte de Genève and the blackened screws are handsome, and this is a true high horology escapement, the coaxial invented by George Daniels in 1974 and first industrialized by Omega in 1999, 20 years ago this year. Still the most exotic escapement you can buy for under $50,000. And jumping into the box one more time, I'm trying to be as interactive as possible today, guys, because we had some serious issues with internet connectivity yesterday during Watches Tonight. So I'm going to try to bounce between you and the table as much as I can. And then I see ID guys saying the Aqua Terra is so underrated, and I deeply agree with that right there. The Watch Lounge, very nice Aqua Terra, one of the best bang for the buck watches out there. I've got one more for you, 43 millimeters in stainless steel. If you are a traveler, the time zone function might not be enough for you. You might want the Aqua Terra GMT. Still 150 meters. This one's a little bit different, though similar in character. It's on a larger scale. 43 millimeters, the better to fit the 24-hour hand and 24-hour scale on the dial. This one is a little large for my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. I would recommend going no smaller if you opt for this 43 millimeter steel case. But what personality and color and character on the wrist. I promised you a Memovox, and I'm going to deliver. This is a watch that can speak for itself. Launched in 2005, shortly after Jaeger-LeCoultre announced its partnership with Aston Martin, the Amvox line. Not modifications to existing watches. No, Amvox was an entire collection released over 10 years, dedicated solely to Aston Martin, heavily inspired by the imagery of Aston Martin road cars. The history was real because Jaeger gauges were present in Aston Martin cars from the 1920s through the 1990s, so this was not simply a shotgun marriage of luxury brands. It had real history and heritage behind it. A full platinum case, let's hear what that gong sounds like. Surprisingly vocal. You better believe this one can wake you up. You will not miss your flight. Now, throwing it on the wrist, this Platinum Edition was a 150-piece limited series, exquisite with a matte black dial, Polaris 1968 style hands and numerals, and as you can see, there's a hobnail center, which is the setting disc for the Memovox function. You'll also note that the 44 wears well. The Amvox 44s are easy to ship, even on a small wrist, and the box section of the Sapphire gives it the look of a vintage plexiglass. The Amvox one was designed as a tribute to the Polaris. It wasn't designed as a tribute watch, but rather a nod and a wink. You can see the triple crowns. You can see the holes on the case back, just like the resonator holes of the original Polaris 65 and 68. Full platinum. This one even includes internally a rotating bezel, so you can time using the bezel and the minute hand, just as you would have on a Polaris 68. So not only is it an alarm, but it features a setable bezel that you can use as a timing instrument. Now note that the bottom of the watch is not calibrated, and that's because the idea was to create the imagery of a vintage Jaeger gauge inside an Aston Martin, create the imagery of a speedometer or a tachometer, which of course were never calibrated at the bottom because that's where the indicator rests when the vehicle is stationary or the engine is at a stop. A lovely timepiece, and with a full clasp, this one gives you incredible value as well as rarity. Plus, it's an alarm, the most versatile of complications and my personal favorite. Which is why if there ever is a Memovox tribute watch dedicated to yours truly, it will be a Memovox. We might be able to have novelty glasses as a giveaway, though. We're working on that for real. Now, let's talk about a watch that combines a white metal and a complication in an entirely different sensibility. We're crossing the border to Deutschland, and now we're talking about Glashütte Original. Launched in 2007, this is the Panerai Tourbillon XL, 42mm in white gold and only 12mm thick. I'm going to wind this one up and highlight some of the finest features of a thoughtful and practical tourbillon. First, let us get super close to the tourbillon. I will hold it stationary. Note that, let's get super close. If we can get closer, I'm all for it. Note that the tourbillon is a wire-style filigree. Note that it has an overcoil hairspring. Note that it is your seconds register. And note that there is a diamond decorative capstone atop the balance staff. There is a diamond in this movement, and that, as far as I can tell, is the best use of a diamond in a men's watch. You've got a power reserve, you've got a loomed dial, and you've got a retrograde date. That's why I say this is a practical tourbillon. Turn it all over, and it's redolent of 19th century Saxon pocket watch finish. Here you can see Glashütte stripes, you can see jewels set in screw-fixed chaton, you can see a double spiral finish on the ratchet wheel, and I'll also mention that that is a freehand finished double spiral polish executed by an artisan who's a specialist in that style. You have both blued and black polished screws and an extended pocket watch style click and click spring. Manual wind, 48-hour power reserve. You can see that this timepiece is rare and of rare beauty, but I will mention it looks exactly like a New York black and white cookie. Throw it on the wrist and you can see it's also small wrist friendly, being broad, flat, and easy to fit underneath the cuff. High style, it'll never be mistaken for any other tourbillon timepiece. Jumping right into the box right here, we have Captain's log saying automatic watches will be. I'm waiting for the follow-up to that. Rich Buddy saying it's an overpriced Glashütte. Well, new, yes. Pre-owned, I think the value is pretty true. And in terms of the hand labor that went into making it, I don't think you can get much more tourbillon for your money. And then right here, we have Hellbop saying cool but unreadable to me. Edward Ledden beating me to the punch saying that's the cookie watch. I love you guys. And then right here, I'm going to show you a watch that gives you a tourbillon of a different flavor from FP Journe, 40mm in rose gold. This is the Tourbillon Souverain. It also features a deadbeat second complication, and I'm going to show you that it features a sweep seconds functionality until you get to about 12 hours of power reserve. That's because the remontoir, the constant force device on the case back, which is actuated by this rocker and this linear spring, but that remontoir requires too much energy to operate when the watch is at a low state of power reserve. If you continue to wind the watch, you will note the deadbeat second, which is energized by the remontoir d'égalité, the constant force device. It jumps into action, and now we have the deadbeat second. We have another wire-style filigree tourbillon with overcoil, also beaten away to 21.6. The timepiece wears nice and flat like the Glashütte, but a very different style. This one is appetizing, but not quite as literal as the cookie fondant-inspired Glashütte. A beautiful watch, the constant force device, the 6-position adjustment, the tourbillon, and the overcoil hairspring allow this watch to keep chronometer grade time. And of course, as with modern FP Journe timepieces, the caliber 1403 is made of solid 18 karat red gold. Now, if you want something that is fine, high horology, but durable, and you don't want to pay the ransom for a Nautilus, and let's say you want to dive, but you like to keep track of the time and the calendar, let me introduce you to the reference 5066, the Blancpain 50 Fathoms Quantième Complète, a triple calendar moon phase, 45 millimeters in polished stainless steel with a sapphire capped bezel. This watch came out in 2010, and frankly, it's a lot. But at 50.8 millimeters lug to lug, it will fit on a small wrist. I should also mention that it features the frankly brilliant underlug adjustment system. Let me show you how this works. Let me find the adjuster for the date. That's the moon phase. And that's the date. There is an underlug adjuster system. You can see that radial date jumping around the dial. So there are no dimples on the flanks of the case. It's completely clean and unmarred. Moreover, the underlug adjuster system does not undermine the 300-meter water resistance, and it will block you during the danger zone, the automatic changeover at night, so you cannot accidentally break the movement by adjusting the calendar. There is a black polished white gold Nautilus style shell. Let me quickly polish that up to remove my fingerprints. This is the caliber 66F8. It is an automatic winder. It's based on the Toric Piguet 1185. On top of everything else, it is a flyback vertical clutch column wheel chronograph. So a moon phase, a clever actuator system, exquisite hand finished, a dive watch, a flyback chronograph, automatic winding with an explosive blue metallic guilloche dial. Yes, blue dials are played out, but you know what? They're a hell of a lot of fun. They have a whole lot of warmth and humanity about them, and they make this high horology behemoth of the deep approachable. It's Leviathan for your wrist. Then right here, BS is saying the Patek Philippe Nautilus should have that rotor. And I agree with you. Missed opportunity in the worst possible way. Richard T. from the left coast joining in Los Angeles right here. And then I have a question from Steve Bowden. Is that bezel black or blue? That bezel is blue. And it is fully loomed. Now, let's talk about... Oh, hell. Let's finish with the biggest of the big guns. The ultimate grail watch. I can't think of a better timepiece on which to end the night with a blowout than the Patek Philippe 5370p. 41 millimeters in exquisite platinum with a Grand Faux enamel black dial featuring white gold applique Breguet numerals. This one has it all, guys. A hand-finished evacuated lug, evacuated profile case that includes wonderful cabochon-style caps at the end of the lug, that includes an exquisite concave bezel that visually pairs the mass down, and then that Grand Faux enamel dial with the Breguets. Throw it on the wrist and it's only 13.5 millimeters thick. A timepiece that can be worn on a small wrist. A Rattrapant Platinum enamel dial chronograph from Patek Philippe. This is a timepiece that anyone can love. If you don't love this timepiece, you have a stone for a heart. Either that or you are a hardcore Longa fanboy. Now you have a coaxial pusher in the crown that activates the split-second functionality. You have a tachometer on the dial, and note closely, this is a loomed dial. You can see it at night. It's a true sports watch. The timepiece on its caseback, the stuff of dreams. Let me remove the fingerprints, because frankly, if any watch ever deserved an unobstructed view, this is it. Now, the caliber, 29535 PS, has 312 parts and 34 jewels. It is a forest of fine mechanism. Note the bridge for the Rattrapant mechanism at center and the pincer system that grips and releases the Rattrapant. Note the exquisite lever and spring system in an almost Nautilus-like shell pattern. The spring itself is black polished and extravagantly decorated. You just saw the instantaneous minute jumper. That's the minute jumper bridge right underneath the Rattrapant mechanism. And this watch featuring a full lateral clutch and a column wheel with a black polished cap, 65-hour power reserve, hacking seconds, overcoil hairspring, adjusted in 6 positions, guaranteed to no worse than -3, plus 2 seconds a day. This is as good as it gets in the world of high horology chronographs. That lateral clutch mechanism allowing you to see the clutch jumping away from contact with the center, the hammers falling on the heart cams and recentering, and all of this immaculately hand-finished. It's almost too much. But for high horology aficionados like you and I, it's just enough. Guys, thank you for joining me tonight. I really appreciate everyone who tuned in, everyone who watched in a second language. If you got up early, if you stayed up late, you made my night. We had 314 concurrent viewers, and that's not bad by the standard of this channel. Thank you so much. There will be a weekend watches too, so stay tuned for that. And I have to remind you, starting tomorrow through next Wednesday, there is a Patek Philippe promotion. We will have promotion prices on that 5370p and dozens of other Pateks in inventory. Time out, Tim out, and thank you for logging on.